Hi, welcome to this Lit in 5 video on Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale. This is a walkthrough of chapters 40 to 45 inclusive, looking very closely at language and the contexts that are relevant to the study of the novel. As you'll know from the previous video on chapters 36 to 39 inclusive, this walkthrough is focused on these 5 key areas of interest in the novel. So the quotes from the chapters that you'll see next, they're identified and chosen from those chapters because they speak to 1, 2, more, maybe all 5, sometimes 3 of them, of these areas of interest. On the previous video for chapters 36 to 39, I talked through these areas of interest in more detail, so you really would benefit from listening to that before we then go on and listen to the extracts in this video. Okay, so we'll move on to our close analysis of chapters 40 to 46. Chapter 40. So, let's ignore the stuff at the top. That was from a previous chapter, so we're not interested in this at the moment. What we are looking at here is Serena Joy arranging the meeting between Offred and Nick, which you've got in here. You'll notice Serena Joy is shown to be in lots of pain here, but still capable of walking fast. Keep an eye for these little dots that mean F or FI again, sorry about that. Just this quote here, she wants it all right, that baby. So there's that idea of advancement and promotion. I suppose liberation, really. They get to go into other roles or different roles, if all dependent on that biological determinism of Gilead. Give me children or else I die, the quote from the Bible. Just this last little bit here, I see the two of us, a blue shape, a red shape, in the brief glass eye of the mirror as we descend. Myself, my obverse. So again, identity reduced to colours and roles. The brief glass eye, there's always that idea of surveillance. It's never far away in Gilead, so linked to the theme of dystopian tropes and power. Okay, next quote, we move to meeting up with Nick. Okay, in this next quote, what we're looking at here is a lot of the sort of patriarchy of the time before, or all time immemorial, really. So here's her liaison with Nick. If we look here, the language she uses, I know why I'm here, to get knocked up, to get in trouble, up the pole. Those were all the names for it once before. Strangely or interestingly, they're kind of applicable now. This is pregnancy outside of wedlock or the sanctioned union of the Gilead regime, but it's interesting those terms for, I don't know, sexual promiscuity, unprotected sex, the things that the Gilead regime and the new right will have objected to previously. That's what's being carried out here. So we're definitely getting towards the ending of the novel, where these forms of rebellion are starting to increase, and the sense of danger is starting to increase as well. More internal, it's qualified here. But we do still have that sense of inferiority. I feel stupid and ugly. Again, if there's kind of sexual contact outside of the ceremony, it's very noticeable that Atwood has Offred feel inferior and insecure. We saw that in Jezebel's, of course, when she was out of her handmaid's uniform. But it is qualified there with that subordinate clause, just coming after it there. With her saying, although I know I am not either. So not totally lacking in a sense of self-worth. More of this patriarchal judgment again. Maybe he thinks I've been slutting around at Jezebel's with the commander or more. Very interesting that there's still that sense of shame and stigma attached to a woman with many sexual partners. Again, that's nothing new, but it's still in existence. within this kind of Gilead regime. It annoys me that I'm even worrying about what he thinks. So again, all the power lies with the man. All the judgment lies with kind of in this patriarchal culture. There was the previous one with the commander where she has sex in Jezebel's, and she says she's disappointed in his slight belly. There's one little moment of sort of reverse judgment back from the female, but mostly on the whole it is that internalised sense of patriarchy and patriarchal judgment and power. Moving on. A few little moments of light-heartedness here in terms of the dialogue between Nick and Offred. So some of the phatic speech, some of the dating cliches of the time before are spoken here. You come here often. What's a nice girl like me doing in a spot like this? We both smile. Okay, so it isn't totally the awkward coldness of sexual contact with the commander or anyone else in Jezebel's for that matter. This is an acknowledgement that we are acting for what else can we do in such a setup. So you've got very important quotes here about identity, which is always something that's a bit hazy and elusive, particularly in postmodern ideas. The self or identity is hard to grasp, to pin down or locate. So if you look at this, we're quoting from late movies from the time before, and the movies then were from a time before that. This sort of talk dates back to an era well before our own. So possibly nobody's ever talked like that in real life. It was all a fabrication from the beginning. We're getting the idea that identity doesn't belong to us, particularly in love or relationships. We are copies upon copies with no original. So you remember there's that idea of the simulacrum, that postmodern idea of a copy upon a copy with no original. Sorry, my daughter's friends are going crazy downstairs. Simulacrum. Oops, I can spell it properly. There we go. Okay, so it was all a fabrication from the beginning. I can see now what it's for, what it was always for. So we've got this idea of identity being elusive, particularly in relationships. So if you look at this, what's the idea of these corny lines? What are the idea of these cliches in relationships? And the answer is to keep the core of yourself out of reach, enclosed, protected. Very cynical and suspicious approach to relationships. Obviously we're in a dystopian regime here. This isn't like a bar or a nightclub. But I think Offred's talking about that in terms of love then, relationships then, and especially love and relationships now. Then we get to the act, physical intimacy between the two of them. She describes it in very neutral terms, and so it goes, and so. She thinks that was already going to be the last time, and she tells fibs on a story to cover up the sounds, which I am ashamed of making. Seems to suggest some kind of more natural enjoyment in terms of sex. Obviously it's a very artificial affair or act when it's taking place in the ceremony. More mischief with their storytelling. It didn't happen that way either. I'm not sure how it happened, not exactly. Okay, this is a key line which definitely links to the historical notes chapter later. All I can hope for is a reconstruction. So the Offred and her identity that we hear, that we are given, is at the mercy of Professor Piexoto and his shaping of the story, but more of that when we go through the historical notes chapter. Okay, so we're into the salvaging chapter, but before we get into that, there are some little moments where she further reflects on her relationship with Nick. Maybe slightly euphemistic here in the quote, "In it I did not behave well." Maybe that's going a bit easy on herself, but I guess she's under the conditions of a dystopian regime. Fear is a powerful stimulant. That's definitely, how a dystopian regime works and operates. If you read any other dystopian fiction, you'll see it's the threat of what might happen, which is often the most effective way of controlling and asserting power over the inhabitants of a dystopian regime. Offred worrying about her relationship with Nick here, whether it would continue. He might say he wasn't going to break any more rules. Even worse, he was no longer interested. Getting something approaching love and affection, really, or feelings, which is obviously very rare in this new right dystopia. So the fact that Nick didn't call things off or cut the relationship off, Offred experienced it as the most incredible benevolence, kindness, and luck. Okay, right, here's the difference. With the commander I close my eyes, but now here each time with Nick I keep my eyes open. I would like a light on somewhere, some echo of college. Okay, so look at there is a difference here between then and now. So they're like a romantic candle on in a bottle, but what we have now instead, searchlight. Not exactly Parisian Romance in the spring, is it, or something like that. The glow of it from the grounds below, filtered through the white curtains. So this is, this isn't a summer holiday or summer romance, is it? This is dystopian romance. A bit of regret here that she didn't have more experiences like this or cherish them more with Luke. Now she's experiencing something similar with Nick in the present. I didn't, and he's fading. So obviously there's a little thing we can use towards memories of loved ones disappearing. Day by day, night by night, he recedes, and I become more faithless. Pretty harsh on herself, given that we don't know where Luke is. But there we go. We make love each time as if we know beyond a shadow of a doubt there will never be any more. So we are starting to see desires unleashed now. Previously they've been repressed and inhibited and repressed, but now they're kind of unleashed, albeit with extreme caution. And then when there is that too, a surprise, extra, a gift, I guess we're getting to the idea of pleasure, illicit pleasure. Something ironic about a dystopia, I guess. No matter how much a dystopian regime tries to control and regulate and police desire, human nature, sorry to sound like the commander, always finds a way of granting or allowing or giving satisfaction to its illicit desires. Some nice metaphors here. Being here with him is safety. It's a cave. Nick Cave. Sorry, bad joke. Of a singer you don't even know. We'll be huddled together while the storm goes on outside. This is a delusion, of course. This room is one of the most dangerous places I could be. So, just a little reminder of the repercussions. If I were caught, there'd be no quarter. I'm beyond caring. Definitely an idea we're approaching the climax of the novel. Okay, a little bit of Moira there, perhaps, influenced Offred. That devil may care attitude. How can I assume I know him, or the least thing about him, and what he really does? Well, indeed, and the way the novel ends, and the way Offred is hustled off towards a van with an uncertain destination, then yeah, we've no idea who or what Nick is and what he really does. But you'll see that in a moment. Some very interesting quotes here that the reader can't then go on to prove or clarify. With this quote, I put my hand on my belly. It's happened, I say. I feel it has. This I know is wishful thinking. Hard to know what to make of that line. In an essay, don't kind of get trapped into Offred is pregnant, Offred isn't pregnant. It just has so much about the ending of this novel. It remains ambiguous and uncertain, with many what critics call aporias, posh name for gaps and things missing in stories. Okay. Okay, this is key, of course. I tell her my real name, and feel as therefore I am known. And then she has instant regret. I should know better and make of him an idol. We're getting someone in love, doing things that maybe you're ashamed of, but you can't avoid doing because you're besotted with someone or falling for someone. We see it here, of course, as well a bit later on. Where's that quote gone? I don't want to escape anymore. I want to be here with Nick, where I can get at him. Okay, so all these unleashed, previously contained and repressed feelings have now been awoken, and she's there with them, beyond caring. I want Nick, love Nick me. Oh, my Nick. Ooh, Nick. Okay, someone extremely besotted and in love. Okay, little hint at the underground movement. Mayday. Off Glenn saying we could get you out. We can get people out if we really have to. Immediate danger. Tempting to link that with what happens later, but again, too many aporias to know for certainty or talk with certainty. It's up to you how you see these next few quotes. Is this evidence of Offred being institutionalised? That sort of Stockholm syndrome. I have made a life for myself here of a sort. So is she settling for this? Is she becoming to be terrified of the idea of moving outside, or has she become acclimatised and gone native? You see that a lot in jails and prisons. The film The Shawshank Redemption, people are institutionalised. She draws a little historical parallel with the settlers' wives and women who survived wars. Humanity is so adaptable, my mother would say. Mother's wisdom here. Truly amazing what people can get used to as long as there are a few compensations. Kind of an impoverished word there, but maybe now if she is thinking about love and Nick as the father of a child, then these are the things that will make Gilead livable, maybe even pleasant. Okay, chapter 42, the salvaging proper, if you like. This opening bit, we're looking at memories, palimpsestic juxtaposition, and yeah, very much juxtaposition here. So everything looks like from the time before the university commencement ceremony. We call it graduation here. Hats, pastel hats, the mums, the black gowns, and then that key change there of but the stage is not the same. 3 wooden posts, loops of rope, microphone and television camera. So obviously Gilead are recording this as a deterrent. That's very big in dystopian fiction. Deterrent. To deter others from acting or transgressing. So they will broadcast this presumably to say this is what happens to those who break the rules. And that's an excellent way of gaining power and control over the mind. That's why the bodies are there on the wall, for example, to deter others from breaking the rules. Okay, so there's what used to be the library, a reminder that knowledge is free, that people could educate themselves, but that doesn't happen anymore. Now it's controlled, to an extent, of what you see and what you learn from. I don't want to be telling this story. This is obviously a very brutal incident. So then we get to the actual act of it. On the stage to the left are those to be salvaged. Now, look at that in terms of power and dystopian control as well. If you salvage something, you rescue, not completely, or you repair, or you recover. You make the best out of what is mostly broken. So yeah, it's really positive connotations when all we're talking about here is illegal execution and murder. Okay, so there's another use of language to control. Okay, let's have a look. Like graduating students about to be given prizes, very important for juxtaposition. They're not inheriting a prize here. This is really chilling. If you look at the description here, Their hands rest in their laps, looking as if they are folded sedately. They sway a little. So that all sounds tra-la-la, lovely, lovely, yes, gonna graduate, blah, 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 blah. But then we get, they'll probably be given injections or pills so they won't make a fuss. Really chilling stuff. It's better if things go smoothly. Ugh, fancy using that sentence about an execution. Televised and recorded execution. Are they attached to their chairs? Impossible to say. This is a good moment of narration. I've begun to shiver. Hatred fills my mouth like spit. We've had a bell ringing earlier, and then we get mentions of saliva and spit in the mouth. Obviously we're linking towards Pavlovian ideas of conditioning. So this is why Offred doesn't want to be telling this story, and she's not proud of this, but she recognises the extent of how she's been programmed. So they ring a bell, and she hates these people. She doesn't know them, she doesn't know why she hates them, she just knows she has a bloodlust and an urge to hurt and destroy. Very, very chilling stuff here. Okay, you can see all the language used here in this bit, really important. In terms of juxtaposition again, all about the juxtaposition here, yes. The sun comes out, pathetic fallacy, happiness, mood, like a Christmas creche, oh my goodness. These are very jarring juxtapositions. I feel hungry. You'll recall they don't feed the women on the morning of a salvaging. So, I don't know. So blood sugars are kind of at a level to increase the violence, I guess. The bell stops tolling. Up comes Lydia, the public face of all this. I like the idea of wine from the PA to mock Lydia and what she's saying. From us, incredibly, there is laughter. So hysteria here being evoked in that bloodlust. It's hard not to laugh. And the key word here, this is why I included this quote, this is supposed to be bing, 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 dignified. A dignified execution, wow. There's a paradoxical juxtaposition of words, isn't it? You've got to bring in the idea of new right Christian ideology here. How Christian is it to have unsolicited slaughter of people who have not had a fair trial, etc., etc. But these are the extents and the nightmarish dystopian outcomes that unchecked new right Christian ideology, Atwood feels, can lead to. So yeah, massively important quote. The Pavlovian stuff, the control of the handmaids, how anti-Christian this is, how this makes a complete hypocrisy of the Gilead regime, and that adjective dignified, super important there. Okay, then we get the speech. So here's the gloss, here's the ideological stuff coming in now. I'm sure we're unaware of the unfortunate circumstances on this beautiful morning. Real sort of political speech here, with well chosen adjectives to sanitise it and clean it up, and to make it sound as much unlike murder and execution as possible. So just picking a few at random here. I'd rather be doing something else. Yeah, I'd like to be, cooking an omelette or something, but I'm going to kill someone today. Duty, there you go. You see this now in the Conservative Party, doing the right thing, how subjective that is. So the idea of duty is to make the Gileadians sound passive. I have no choice in this. I have to follow the orders that are given to me, when, that is just a cop-out, and denies their active role in deciding to kill 3 people today, or whatever it is. In the name of duty that we are here today. Good old duty. Okay, so Offred, of course, can see right through it. The same platitudes, the same slogans, the same phrases, and she's quite a seasoned inhabitant of Gilead now. I've heard this speech before, or one like it often enough. And then she recites all their bullshit. The torch of the future, the cradle of the race, the task before us. It's hard to believe there will not be polite clapping after this speech, and tea and cookies served on the lawn. So there you go. It's the Great British Bake Off, but with a little bit of murder involved. So tea and cookies served on the lawn. Okay, more juxtaposition here, designed to unsettle the reader and show the hypocrisy of Gilead. The woman helped up onto the high stool as if she'd been held up steps of a bus. So that simile is really good for the hypocrisy and the juxtaposition, dystopian, all that kind of, pretty much all of them really. The noose adjusted delicately around in. Oh, isn't that nice, that adverb? They've got a bit of consideration and compassion in how they do it. Like a vestment. Brilliant simile there, getting towards religious hypocrisy. Vestment, of course, priests' clothes. A little reminder that these murders are being done in the name of. So killing in the name of, all that kind of thing. And then as the brutal kind of following end of that sentence, the stool kicked away. I've heard the long sigh go up from around me, the sigh like air coming out of an air mattress. So again, more with these similes. A domestic one this time. So mattress, domesticity, kind of ordinary life. But this isn't a mattress, this is a human being wrongly or falsely, corruptly slaughtered. Okay, the stuff I've highlighted in green, this is Offred going through or recounting or recalling her involvement in this. I don't think I've included the word in any of these quotes, but it is in the novel. This here on the right, particicution, this neologistic blending. There you go, one for the linguists out there. A blending of participation and execution. But listen to the sort of positive connotations it puts on joining in the act of murder. Oh, get involved. Particicution. There you go. Participate. Have a go. We applaud your effort. And again, how sanitised that is, but definitely linked to power and dystopian tropes. Remember we spoke about language as being a way to control and ideologically brainwash. So, what was it? From the first Iraq War, collateral damage as a way of covering up and controlling how people think about the killing of Iraqi people. Just the buildings had been damaged. But here, particicution. It almost calls you out. Oh, don't get involved here. You just sit down while the rest of us do the work and get involved. You slacker. It's got that intent, I think, that if you don't participate, you are inferior somehow. So, very important piece of language, really clever word made up by Margaret Atwood to show the horror of New Right ideology and the Gilead regime and their attempts at power and control. I've leaned forward to do it in time with the others. Then I've placed my hand on my heart to show unity. Oh, so you have to do it, but you also have to show that you mean it with this gesture. And my complicity, my part, my involvement in the death of this woman. I have seen horrible kind of scarring stuff. Who now seize hold of them and drag down with all their weight. I don't want to see it anymore. I look at the grass instead. I describe the rope. So there's Offred disengaging and choosing to break rank. It's a good job. The novel ends shortly with an escape or I don't know, whatever it is, because such non-compliance, non-conformity is obviously not going to go down well in Gilead. Okay, so Offred recognises that. She recognises that to be not seen as participating is obviously, well, it stamps you, brands you. Remember the tattoo earlier on her ankle? The commander, it stamps you as lukewarm, lacking in zeal. From the word zeal, which has religious connotations, also terrorist connotations, but I guess religion and terrorism horribly overlaps sometimes, unfortunately. You get the word zealot. Okay, so a believer who goes to fanatical extremes in support of their cause. I mean, that can be anything. It can be your football team, it can be a love of an ideology, a political belief, Jeremy Corbyn, you name it, But in Gilead, if you don't show that kind of frothing at the mouth, sort of crazy stare, a bit losing touch with reality commitment, then you signal yourself out as being a danger or a worry. Here's Lydia. You know the rules for a particution. My mistake, I did include it in the quotes, I didn't just dream it. This is Gladiators, you probably don't remember that. You will wait until I blow the whistle. After that, what you do is up to you until I blow the whistle again. Understood. Now, a rare moment of licence. Okay? I don't mean like a fishing licence or a driving licence. I mean, you're allowed to do what you want to do for a limited time only. There's a critic called Bakhtin who calls this the carnivalesque, where you're allowed to break the rules and subvert the rules for a limited time only. So a modern example would be like if you're a man on a stag do, you are allowed for that particular occasion to get dressed up as a woman in a skirt and wear a bra, and that's okay. That's alright for that particular day and that particular time. Then the stag do ends, the whistle is blown, the second whistle, and you go back to being who you normally are. In a dystopian regime, that actually makes a ton of sense. So all pent up and repressed frustrations and feelings will allow you to let them out, but in a way that we control. So we're still talking in terms of number one, power here. What you do is up to you. It is licensed freedom. It is not complete and utter freedom. It's sanctioned only by the ruling elite. I think coming up she likens the whistle to like a volleyball game. So there's another of those brilliant memories or juxtapositions. This is not a sporting contest in year 9. This is, when I blow the whistle, you will speed along the death of these people. Okay, key chapters. Between them they half carry, half drag a third man. He too is in a guardian's uniform. Okay, so one of Gilead's own. If this is true, of course, again, this can serve as a wonderful deterrent. The fact that even, or especially their own, are not beyond justice, Gileadian new right justice. Okay, so we hear from Lydia about what this man's offence is. Note the reference to a kind of triumph. So self-righteous, total belief and conviction, as zealots do. Someone I used to work for was like, believe in God was in their corner on on all of their decisions, even if they were wrong or horrible to people. Be massively sceptical of this. All right, we have no way of proving or disproving that this is what this man did, and whether indeed there was a partner involved and whether he has been shot. This could all be extremely just pure fabrication. As a little deterrent, as a little reminder to control and warn the masses. So the idea of a scapegoat, very effective for control. And they do that with the wall, of course. Every now and again, periodically, just another scapegoat, just to kind of keep the masses in tow, in line and controlled. The penalty for rape, as you know, is death, and obviously we cite the good book, particularly poisonous area of the Old Testament, Deuteronomy. So there's your biblical precedent. Remember we had the word duty a minute ago, to give that sense of passivity to what they do. I can't not kill him. The good book has laid down the rules for what happens in this situation. Nonsense, of course, but that's what these zealots do. I will not. I love this bit. It was brutal. Not arguing with that in terms of rape as an act, of course. But then we get, I will not offend your ears with any of the detail. Oh, offence, yeah, you know. I love the word offend you. I love the phrase offend your ears and dignity. Because, you know, that this is alright, this murder, you know, no trial or rehabilitation. It's going to kill the bastard, if indeed he's done it. And then to ramp up the crowd's dislike, I'm deeply sceptical of this. I can't prove it hasn't happened, but I also don't believe it has happened. Except to say that one woman was pregnant and the baby died. obviously to a bunch of handmaids who have been conditioned into believing, give me children or else I die. That's going to increase the bloodlust, isn't it? And it works, look. Despite myself, I feel my hands clench. After what we go through. It's true, there is a bloodlust. I want to tear, gouge, rend. So Aunt Lydia's pushed all the correct buttons here. Proper dystopian stuff, proper power and control, underpinned by new right Christian ideology. And we have meek and mild handmaids, allegedly, now turned into crazed killers. There it is, the whistle, an echo from a volleyball game of long ago. Ironic juxtaposition. He tries to deny it. He can't speak because he's had whatever done to him, which is awful. Another great simile, but it's only great because it's unsettling. There's a surge forward like a crowd at a rock concert at the time before. So I don't know who's big in it. Bon Jovi, alright, yeah. So, but this is obviously not frontline at a Bon Jovi gig. The urgency coming like a wave through us. So there's this rage, Pavlovian, sort of controlled. We are permitted anything, and this is freedom. Oh my goodness. In my body also, I'm reeling. Red, the handmaids, but obviously nice and ambiguous, could be blood as well. Goodness me. Okay, similar ideas but different quotes. Obviously you guys have got to be quoting more from the text. That's the big flaw from most of you. Let's have a look. The ants on the platform gazing down with interest. So they're assessing who performed well today at the party-secution, or who's giving them cause for concern. Oh, she only did 2 left hooks, she's not committed anymore. And there's that surveillance, a better view from up here. Very dystopian there. Little bit of conflict here between Offred and Ovglen. Why didn't you do that? I thought you. Don't look at me, they're watching. So, back to there again. Offglen has a logic for doing this. Don't be stupid, he wasn't a rapist at all. He was he was one of ours. So hinting at that Mayday group again. And this is an act of mercy from Offglen. I knocked him out, put him out of his misery. So stop him feeling pain on his way to the grave. Dearly me, what kind of a world? Well, it's a dystopian world obviously, but what kind of a world is it where that's an act of kindness? Goodness me. Here's Janine, she's broken, her eyes may have come loose, she's here at like phatic small talk. How are you doing? She's got a clump of blonde hair in her hand, and she gives a small giggle. So yeah, totally mental deterioration here in terms of what Gilead has done to her. The whistle goes again, and then it's back to dignity, to use that ironic word from earlier. Find your partners 2 by 2, reform your line. Few pay attention. And there's an attempt to control or to regain or return back to your usual viewing, if you like. Okay, a bit more mental deterioration from Janine. Really important to notice this bit though. She's in free fall, she's in withdrawal, and in that little bit of dialogue which further demonstrates Janine's mental deterioration, that most American of cliches, you have a nice day. So this is America at its worst, or America if taken to its new right excesses in the 1980s. This is a nice day for new right American ideology. Rapists have been killed and murdered legally under theological law, and so that's a nice day. That's Trumpism at its best. This is making America great again, to kill and punish all the rapists and the robbers and the robbers to rape rapists and blah blah blah. So please don't miss the kind of cultural contextual significance of that line in Janine's dialogue as she holds a clump of blonde hair and her eyes are loose and she's become insane. She is the product or the disastrous child of new right American ideology. So a very important character, particularly in these moments. Offred is disgusted, as you would be, and the smell of the rope obviously is haunting her in terms of guilt. The smell makes me feel sick. I'm also hungry. Death makes me hungry. She's, in terms of nature, she's been reduced to something very basic and blunt. So, depending on your view of evolution, then these are very feral and basic instincts of any living thing. We try to avoid death. We fight so we avoid death. We have to eat to avoid death. How basic are these? And this is what she's been reduced to. She's not at Janine's level, of course. Offred still resists it and can step away from it. But look at all these very simple and base passions. I want to go to bed, I want to make love right now, I want to eat, I'm hungry, sex, food, death, sex, food, death, sex, food, death. You can see how she's been reduced to this kind of, trying to think, prehistoric, I don't know if that's the right word, something very feral. I think atavistic is the correct word to use in this situation. Look it up, it'll expand your vocab. Chapter 44, New Offglen. So we saw the previous one, chatting onto it, but we've got a new Offglen. So we go back to our scripted speech here. We aren't supposed to form friendships, loyalties among one another. Decent little quote. Has Offglen been transferred so soon? Remember what we've just seen. The wives were watching, and there was that little exchange between Offred and Offglen about don't be stupid, he's a political, and that's the last we see of Offglen. So it's tempting to think, although there's another aporia there, we can never know. Maybe that was overheard, and goodbye Offglen. Has Offglen been transferred so soon? I am Offglen, the woman says. Word perfect. And of course she is, the new one. And Offglen, wherever she is no longer Offglen. Okay, so there's that idea of homogeneity again. Identical repetitions of same versions. But it's all to do with that patronym again. So we don't know the female name, but Offglen is dead. Long live Offglen. They take on the name of the male commander, and she is the new Offglen. Patronym. There you go. Yeah, should have an N on the end. Nearly there. I'll go really quickly on these. Offred tries to see if the new Offglen is familiar with the May Day movement and whether she's going to be an ally or whether she's one to be wary of. She's this really contrived and artificial way of getting the word May Day into the conversation, as in referring to the 1st of May. And then we get this awful kind of worry that, oh my goodness, she's a convert, she's a zealot, she's a believer in the cause. So New Offglen says, you ought to make an effort to clear your mind of such echoes. So the regime are aware of May Day, and New Offglen is discouraging that from Offred. You can see the effects on it. I feel cold seeping over my skin. From this moment in the story, this really increases Offred's panic and worry. That I've got to escape, I've got to do something, I'm powerless, I've broken all these rules with Nick. There's an increased sense of panic now. as we get towards the end of the novel. So you can see that here. Look, these are the things that Gilead have on me in terms of, or over me in terms of power. They know who my child is. They could bring her. What if they have Luke, my mother, or Moira? She turned religious here, which is very interesting. There's only a couple of other moments in the novel where she's done that. Dear God, don't make me choose. And then she becomes really submissive. I'll become a complete I'll become a drone. I'll become like Janine is, rather than have my loved ones at the mercy of this. So that tone of panic is in chapter 45, nearly there. So it kicks off still with this mode of panic. I stand the moment emptied of air as if I've been kicked, really worrying now about what's going to happen to her. So she's dead and I am safe after all. She did it before they came. I feel a great relief. I feel thankful to her. She has died that I may live. I'm sure that's from the Bible. I will mourn her off Glyn later. Again, we don't know. Happens off camera. It's an aporia. Wonder if she'll turn up in the sequel. Don't put that in your essay. Another turn towards religion. Look at the religious language. I'll sacrifice, I'll repent, I'll abdicate, I'll renounce. So, willing to become totally passive, totally obedient. Now the threat of sanctions and violence or harm towards their loved ones. And then she's summoned by Serena Joy. Twist here, of course. So there's Serena Joy, nothing to say for yourself. About what? And then we get, look, she says, she brings her free hand from behind her back. It's her cloak she's holding, the winter one. So she's been rumbled in terms of going to Jezebel's. Someone's apparently singing Happy Birthday downstairs. Hang on a minute. Okay, so there's Serena's disgust behind my back. You could have left me something. So that idea of sort of strange kind of marital fidelity. You've been stealing my husband, my commander. More kind of misogyny, kind of biblical ideas, Old Testament of course, of promiscuous women, a slut, you'll end up the same. Nick has stopped whistling. Sorry, I got interrupted then. Nick has stopped whistling, he knows the seriousness of it. There is nothing he can do to help. Well, maybe there is, we shall see shortly. And then she's orderly and calm. She's doing really well to keep it together, given that threat is increasing. 46. She considers possibilities of escape. I could walk, I could do this. Remember, there's precedent now with Moira having made an escape, so there was a role model there. Red is so visible. Another way in which her uniform is now imprisoning again. I could go to this, I could wander. I consider these things idly. So these are the possibilities. Fatigue is here in my body, in my legs and eyes. That is what gets you in the end. Another little two-fingered salute towards religion. Faith is only a word embroidered. So, in some senses in the novel, no it isn't. It's the thing that causes their imprisonment. But Offred's and Atwood's resistance to it, saying, okay, yeah, religion, fair enough, have your gods, but don't take it to this level of zealotry where you impose a world order, a dystopian world order. So there's a rebuttal of using religion to justify existence and gain power. And we're on to our second to last slide. Okay, let's have a look. How could I have believed I was alone in here? There were always two of us. Get over it, she says. I'm tired of this melodrama. I'm tired of keeping silent. Almost a sense of a alter ego here. I think this is referring to like Offred's rebellious side. And that's starting to speak to him more now. Worse is coming then. So there's regret here that I shouldn't have been having sex with Nick and enjoying myself. I should have been arming myself. The world is full of weapons if you're looking for them. Again, that's maybe a little comment towards things up here, and misuse of Christianity and the Bible. I've included a quote elsewhere from The Merchant of Venice in one of the previous typed out slides. The devil can cite scripture for his own ends or for his own purposes or something like that. That's a great quote to use. Okay, so we're summoned into having to explain herself. I expect a stranger, but it's Nick who pushes open the door, kicks on the light. I can't place that unless he's one of them. There was always the possibility that Nick, the private eye, dirty work is done by dirty people. So she thinks she's being betrayed. But, we get, it's alright, it's Mayday, go with them. He calls me by my real name. So, obviously the reader doesn't get to hear that, but that little token of trust that she afforded him, he can now use that back to her to gain her trust. Why should this mean anything? Okay, so here's the escape. She's still panicky, of course. Trust me, fancy saying that in a dystopian novel, which in itself has never been a talisman, carries now. Then we have this little altercation here. What she done, says Serena Joy, she wasn't the one who called them then. So there's your first indication that there is subterfuge. There's something been arranged behind Serena Joy's back. Subterfuge. A planet's been made without her knowing. This is very interesting. Whatever she had in store for me was more private, so there was worse for Offred if there wasn't for this intervention. We can't say, ma'am, says the one in front of me. So there's a hierarchy above the Gilead regime, it seems. The commander tries to have some kind of authority here. I need to see your authorization, you have a warrant. But this bit of dialogue comes next, is very interesting. Not that we need one, sir, but all is in order. In other words, F off, I'm taking her away whether there's a warrant or not. Violation of state secrets. Interesting. So that's the ruse by which Offred is smuggled out. More panic from Offred. What have I been saying, and to whom? Which one of his enemies has found out? Possibly he, the commander, will be a security risk now. So if that's happened on his watch, the commander's watch, then he's accountable to someone else. Massively important line here in yellow. I am above him, the commander, looking down. So massive in terms of power. Last page of the novel, Offred's novel, that is, or story. He is shrinking. There have already been purges among them. There will be more. Serena Joy goes white. Bitch, after all he did for you. Yeah, he was brilliant. He was amazing. He cup of tea every morning in bed, etc. Okay, so hugely ambiguous ending. There's the O'Connor wives crying. Everything was pinned on their woman producing a baby. Now they've lost status and chance and hope. I'm going to read the last paragraph. The van waits in the driveway. Its double doors stand open. The two of them, one on either side now, take me, passive, by the elbows to help me in. Interesting. Whether this is the end or a new beginning, I have no way of knowing, neither do we. I have given myself over into the hands of strangers, not exactly Blanche, but there you go, because it can't be helped. And so I step up into the darkness within, or else the light. And that's all you get, ladies, in terms of the fate of Offred. Piexoto has his spin or take, or his hypotheses about it. But we don't know whether she's being taken to a worse prison for genuinely doing something against state secrets, or whether Nick is good as his word and this is a rescue. And that's all we can say about it. And there we have it. That's been our walkthrough of the main chapters of The Handmaid's Tale. This doesn't cover historical notes. I will try and make a further video in relation to that. If you found this useful, please add your likes, tell your friends, add comments, subscribe to the channel, all the usual things. Thank you.